All right, let's talk about that feeling. The one where your mind is just always on. It's like having 100 browser tabs open and you can't find the one that's playing the music. It is relentless. But what if all of that wasn't a flaw? What if it was something else entirely? That's what we're going to get into. I mean, really, have you ever had this happen? You're just trying to fall asleep and suddenly your brain decides, hey, remember that weird thing you said to your boss 2 weeks ago? Let's watch that again. And again. And again. It's like you're a passenger in your own head, stuck on this crazy loop.
So that brings us right into our first section, what we're calling the never-ending replay. Let's actually listen in on what that internal soundtrack sounds like for so many of us.
It usually starts with that one, right? That little jolt. Ugh, I can't believe I said that. And then, almost immediately, it's followed by the cross-examination. Why? Why on earth did I say that?
And finally, the perfect comeback that you think of, about 6 hours too late. I should have said this instead. It's an exhausting, draining cycle to be caught in.
And when you really boil it all down, this whole experience seems to have two core components. First, there's this constant look backward, replaying the past, digging for clues. But then there's also this constant look forward, trying to predict and plan for every single possible outcome of a future event. It's analysis in both directions. So we have this really complex thing our brain does. And what do we call it? Well, usually we slap a pretty negative label on it, which brings us to Section 2, the overthinking label. Sound familiar? We call it overthinking. And just listen to that phrase, I wish I could turn my brain off. It sounds like we're talking about a broken machine, right? That word overthinking, it implies you're doing too much of something, that you're doing it wrong. It basically frames a part of you as a personal failure. Okay, but what we're doing here today is challenging that label. So for Section 3, let's get into a much more powerful and, frankly, more accurate way of looking at what's really going on inside your head. And here is the question that just changes the entire game. What if all that mental noise isn't a bug in your programming? What if it's not a flaw at all, but a feature, an incredibly powerful piece of standard equipment that maybe you just haven't been taught how to operate yet? This idea introduces a really cool, game-changing concept from the research, a totally new name for this whole experience, which completely flips that old idea on its head. Let's meet high-level processing. Just notice the difference in the language. It's not a problem, it's a tendency. It's not a sign of being broken, it's linked to high mental activity. Wow. I mean, that simple change in words takes all the judgment out of it and replaces it with understanding. It really does change everything. And you can see that shift so clearly here. On the one hand, you have overthinking. We see it as a personal flaw, something that just makes us anxious, something we need to fix. But then, look at the other side. High-level processing. Suddenly, it's an indicator of a powerful mind. It's a tool for doing deep analysis. It's not something to fix. It's an incredible ability that you can learn to harness. So if it's not a flaw we need to get rid of, but an ability we can actually use, well, what is that ability exactly? Let's dive into why this is nothing less than a cognitive superpower. This is the big one. That feeling of being totally overloaded, of your brain just spinning its wheels, that's a misinterpretation. What's really happening is your brain is engaging in some seriously sophisticated, advanced problem solving. And that problem solving tends to happen in 3 steps. First up, there's deep data analysis. That's you replaying conversations to squeeze out every last drop of information. Then there's complex future simulation. This is where you run dozens of what-if scenarios to find the absolute best way forward. And finally, you put it all together for strategic pathfinding, using all that data to solve really complex problems that other people might totally miss. So that endless replay loop we talked about, the one that feels so frustrating, it's not random noise. It's not pointless. It's your brain running the numbers, crunching the data, all to come up with a better, smarter strategy for next time. It's actually incredibly productive work. And ultimately, this is the new label we get to use. You don't have an overthinking problem. What you have is an advanced problem-solving ability. Think about that. It's a strength. It's a skill. It is a genuine asset. So let's wrap this up. The goal was never to figure out how to turn your brain off. Why would you want to shut down a supercomputer? The real question, the much more exciting and empowering question, is now that you know what it is, how are you going to harness your superpower?